We've gotten through it before. We will continue. The homes still need to be sold. Buyers and sellers need help with that. Quite possibly more than ever before. Homes are more expensive than they've ever been. Loan programs are complex. Yes, we're going through some change, and that change may be uncomfortable, but on the other side of that, we're still selling homes. I would focus on the task at hand, helping more people get through that process more often and do a better job. You do that, I think everything's gonna be okay.
Jason, thank you for making some time to come hang out with me
Leo,
today.
Thank you, absolutely.
The goal of this podcast is to storytell for agents because they see a finished product. You know, you're the broker of brokers in California and Illinois, and you're the man with all the answers. But there was once a day you just passed the test.
For sure.
And you hadn't done your first transaction. So
for sure.
If you can take us back to, tell us who you are, so the folks that may not be from California that don't have you on speed dial, but then also how you started in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason Bosch, director of the Californias, as we call them now, since we're regionalizing, and Illinois, and I've been licensed in California now 31 years, just completed. Started originally as a loan officer, an apprentice loan officer, for an operation not far from here in Riverside, California, that did FHA financing for HUD-owned homes to Spanish-speaking buyers. And that's how I started. And most of them at that needed homeowners assistance, down payment assistance, because they were low to moderate income earners. And I did that for 5 or 6 years before actually going to work directly for HUD. HUD at that time used to sell homes. There was a lot of foreclosures in Southern California, and HUD would sell homes directly to the consumer online. It was kind of a new concept. And then they found a company that did their marketing and their management for them. And I took that opportunity. I was not a college student when I started, so I took that opportunity to go back to college, get to work, learn kind of the process of sales and mass, and that was my start. That's how I started. That was the first 10 years of my career.
Got it. Yeah. And then how did you transition to self-employment?
I did. Working for the M&M contractors, they were called back then. I kind of worked my way up the ranks, and as I was going through my college career, that got me into leadership. And I got a broker's license during that time. And so when that contract came to an end, a local franchisee, a prominent individual that sold a lot of HUD homes, kind of recruited me over to be the manager of his office.
Got it.
And that's how I transitioned over from that corporate world, if you will, over to sales, still in leadership and management, but at a more local level. And again, not far from here, Riverside, California.
Got it. And then how did that progression go? Were you ever, an agent in the field, or were you mostly managing agents?
Mostly managing. The mother of my kids and I at the time had kind of a team, and so she would do sales. We had the start that we both did in loans. So our typical client remained during that time. So I was in leadership and management, and she was in sales, and we would do the loan. Again, Spanish-speaking audience, first-time home buyers. Many of them remained foreclosures. Then at some point the market shifted into the regular market, the retail market, and then it shifted again into the short sale market. And while I was mostly on the leadership side, there was a lot of dabbling with the team, since the wife and I at the time did that.
And so it sounds like you've seen markets change.
A number of them.
What would you say to agents who are experiencing probably what could be their first shift in their career, right?
Well, that's a great point and a question I get often, and the reality of it is that individuals always need to buy and sell. A home is something that is always needing to be adjusted because the family grows, or the family changes, or there's a job move, or there's a job loss. And so however it's sold and whoever sells it, the government or a bank or a seller, those transactions need to take place. And what I've seen during the different markets that I've been involved with is that we adjust accordingly. Programs come up, people get co-signers, they get adjustable rate mortgages or buy downs or what have you, and individuals find a way to purchase the properties, and we are in there transitioning that, helping them with that. So similarly enough, I feel the same way of what we're going into now. The industry will find a way to get through this transition.
What are you seeing that agents need to be paying attention during this shift we're experiencing? And again, depending on when people watch this,
Sure.
I'm saying the shift of the NAR settlement implementation and how it's going to affect everything.
You know, my opinion around this is that the educated agent, the agent that is informed and can articulate what's going on and how business will be done moving forward, the agent that can articulate that at the hyper-local level will remain very valuable. Homes still need to be marketed. Homes still need to be promoted. AI, you know, we were talking about that. What's going on with technology that the local representative will use in order to put that home in front of more individuals. All of that will remain. And the individual agents that are able to best articulate that value to their buyer or their seller is who I think is going to win.
Talk to me about how you manage so many things at a high level, right? I think most agents have struggle sometimes managing a couple transactions, and you're in charge of supervising lots and lots of transactions. I'm curious to know how you organize your day, your weeks, your months. How do you stay on top of what's important?
Well, first off, I learned this long ago. If it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. So we plan things out at the different state operations, pre-planned as best as possible. Now, of course, well, Jason, what about, right? What about when this happens? And it does. And yet the operation is so large with so many agents. In California alone, we have about 11,000 of them. The thousands of transactions that take place. We really have to have systems in order to run an operation that large effectively, and for the most part, Leo, remotely. So systems, following the schedule, following the calendar, and having some flexibility. That's the other part about it. You got to have fun. You can't be too rigid, right? You got to be able to have some flexibility with things, because there's always something that is adjusting, and if you're too rigid, then you're going to have a harder time with that. And so that's kind of my personal philosophy around that.
No, and I mean, you're being humble there with the amount of things you supervise. What do you say to an agent who's starting, this week, right, this month, and you've been licensed 31 years, I've been licensed 23 years. Things are different.
For sure.
What things would you tell them to get expertly versed in right now?
Yeah, my belief is around what goes on in the hyper-local market remains valuable. The companies out there that provide data, sales data as it's happened and all that will remain and that will continue. But there are other things that continue to require your insight into what's going on locally. I'm talking about things like the school districts, the difference between traffic at this part of town during this time of the day versus that one. I remember selling my own home, and we lived on a major street, and the traffic that took place with the elementary school and junior high required me to leave 30 minutes earlier every day to my commute here to Orange County to one of our offices that I didn't know before I bought the house. See, that's an example of information that is hyper local, and data doesn't tell you that. Where you do your shopping, your access to transportation, freeways, trains, what's going to happen. We got a big train coming up, for example, here in California, that's going to go up to Las Vegas, and that is going to potentially create some commuter traffic between Vegas and LA, if you can imagine that. Those are the things that I think an agent that is, I keep using this term, hyper-local in their knowledge, will remain an asset to every client that they service. And that's where I would start. if I'm starting in the business now, is really getting to know those things, working with people, individuals locally that are already doing it, following them, following good mentors. I think that's the place to start.
I wholeheartedly agree, right? With all the conversation with AI, I think people say, the agent's going to go away. And I said, well, if the agent was going to go away, they would have already. Right? We've seen $50 billion worth of private capital invested into disrupting our industry in the last 10 years. And we've seen most of those companies either go out of business or shift to a business where they partner with agents, right? The ones that said we're going to disrupt agents, and now they need the agent to do the last mile, as I call it. And the reality is, real estate is infrequent, right? So Fannie Mae statistics used to be we moved every 7 years. It's up to 9 years now. So the average family moves 6 times in their life. 3 as a renter, 3 as a homeowner. First time home buyer, move up, move down. And so when you think about it, that's you only do it 3 times in 30 years.
Not that much.
Every time you do it, it's completely different. Right? And so having that local expert hold your hand and walk you through the process is super important. And the other thing that you said that's super interesting is I've seen agents have been in the business 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, out of nowhere do 50, 60 deals in their first year as a solo producer with one strategy, which is hyper-local knowledge on YouTube, which then targets relocation buyers, right? Because you become that local expert. And again, translating that on the internet, which as a concept is super cool to me, because you know how long it takes to sit in a car and go on a listing appointment. But imagine you create one piece of content and then that gets consumed 5, 10, 20 hours a day, right? You're not having to be in appointments all over the place, and so that continues to be evergreen content. I moved to Miami almost 5 years ago, and I've sold a couple homes, and same with my wife. And when we moved to Miami, we needed a realtor, which I tell people that I'm like, I know this business. I'm a broker.
Yeah, of course.
I've been in this business my whole life, but when I moved to a city I was not familiar with, I needed a local expert to tell me, where I was like, hey, my only 2 requirements were Lifetime and Whole Foods. And then they were the ones who guided me. It's like, okay, if those are your requirements based on your kid's age, the schools you like, this is where you should be. And I think people, especially when you're moving locally, it's not as important, but for me it was super top of mind, having been someone who had done so many deals, to say, you know what, I need local expert.
For sure. As you're saying that, it's reminding me of some of the other things that I think are very valuable, and that's being able to guide someone through this sometimes very delicate and highly emotional transaction that they only go through, I didn't even think about it the way you said it, 2 or 3 times in their lifetime. Right? And there's so many moving pieces. Where the down payment's going to come from? Things that they need to pay off, and potentially they're qualifying, and what's going on with interest rates, and there's a lot of emotion that can be attached to that. So the other piece is, in addition to that knowledge, right, working on yourself, your sales skills, being able to present somebody effectively, and many times calm them down during the transaction and make sure they know you've got them. Hey, it's all right, Leo, I've got you through this Miami move. It's going to be all right, and help them through. So it's a skill set.
I've actually said I think that part of the value of a realtor is to keep the buyer and the seller from suing each other. Right? Because, and there is actually data to support that. It's not just a kind of tongue-in-cheek comment. There is data that shows FSBOs with no representation end up in higher percentages of litigation, right? Because there's nobody there to calm people down and say, you can't have that, how dare you ask for that? And the agents play referees on both sides. That was a pretty interesting comment there. It is highly emotional, it's highly complex, and it's infrequent.
Yeah, it will remain a very skilled profession, with potentially more tools than they've ever had. Leo, agents, right? The salespeople, the folks right on the front lines, potentially more tools than you've ever had to handle clients. That skill set will remain. And irrelevant of what goes on in the market and with technology and all these new developments, that knowledge and that ability to help people through it, I think is probably now higher. The requirements to have those skills is higher perhaps than it's ever been.
So, getting to spend time together is fun because you understand the inner workings. If an agent just joined eXp.
Yes.
And I think for the folks watching, you and I were just on a different call
Yes,
together
yes,
where I
yes,
was
right.
talking to folks, and I
Right.
actually gave the analogy that between agents and staff, we're almost 90,000 people, which is the size of, larger than probably the average American town.
Very. Yeah.
And so when you move to a town, you know where your house is, the school, and maybe, the grocery store and a couple other things. But until you need something, you don't know where the hardware store is or the, concert venues are. If I'm brand new to eXp in California, and you could wave a magic wand, what kind of either essentials do agents need to know about, or kind of, surprises that are fun, that are not, essential, but just as cool in your opinion? So to give us the must-haves and then the nice-to-haves.
Yeah, must-haves, I would definitely get involved in our broker training that is in the cloud, if you will, and I use that term very loosely because I want to say every brokerage nowadays is in the cloud, right? Prior to my joining eXp, for the franchise that I was involved with prior, the way to catch me was in my cell phone, because that's where I was most of the time, driving from office to office. So in the cloud is really just getting involved with your individuals that are going to help you with the contracts and the inner workings that right now are transitioning but are very important. So for a new agent, I would ensure that they know where to go to for that. Right, and sometimes there's miscommunication from our competition that we don't have enough of that, or it's hard to get to. It's more simple than it really is for, I would say, most operations. Another thing that I would, so that's number one. Number two is I would, if I'm just starting out, I'm a coach at heart, and I really believe that my different roles have always had me really coaching individuals. You need to find somebody that's going to coach you through or mentor you through this part of your career to the next part of your career. And that could even be or include modeling, right? But really find individuals in your marketplace or surrounding that are doing the next level for you and get with them. I mean, invite them to a cup of coffee, follow them, copy them. Look at what they're doing. Get coached by them, right? That's another thing. Some folks are afraid to somehow invest in themselves and the industry. That's the second part that I would highly encourage somebody to do, is find others on the sales and business side that are going to help you and make sure that you follow their advice.
So that's the must-haves, I feel like.
Yes. Okay.
So
Yep.
what are the? You had no idea we have this. Like what's kind of like the Easter egg, if you will.
Well, internally we have toolkits that we're providing to our agents that are really helping them navigate, especially right now, this changing and dynamic space that we're going in, right? So there's a lot of internal systems and pieces to help you as a new agent that we provide as a brokerage, as in a company, that I would also get with your local team, with your state team, that can help you navigate through some of that.
Now, I know that in the last 2 years, we've really improved the process.
Yes.
And, talk about agent care desk and 24/7
Yes.
and broker direct line and, how once upon a time, you would have to call a couple places to get answers. And
Sure.
now we've really, really streamlined that.
Sure. We're an international company now, Leo. We're not just a company that is in different states or even just in the United States. And so that reality has probably forced some of these operational changes for us, where really we have staff around the clock that is working to support our agents and our brokers. And that could be anything from internal things like how to move my license, or how to transfer from one MLS to the other, or referral agreements, or I'll go down the list. Or it could just be how to adjust your internal corporate email address, or how to help you with your online accounts. We really have that now, and it's continuing to develop around the clock. Which is exciting. And the other thing is that it's no longer only in English. We're doing so much, including our training, in Spanish, because so many of our clients, agents, and their clients are in those Spanish-speaking communities. And there's a lot more there that's going to take place as well.
Got it. So if you could talk to an agent who is struggling right now, right? Because that's, you've heard me talk about this. That I recently was on a big stage and you heard me say this. It's like, one is remembering we're in a very low transaction count year, right? Actually, like the lowest probably in 30 years. And there's that Inman poll that came out that like 54% of all agents are thinking of switching companies right now. And I personally think that's a byproduct of that scarcity. And so people are like, is something wrong with me? Should I go somewhere else? What do you say to folks who are probably struggling, they're doing less than they were a year ago or 2 years ago? What do you say to that person who's questioning themselves or questioning being in our industry?
Yeah, and that's a reality for many. Certainly for some, potentially for many. You got to remain a professional in your craft. And the reality of it is that in our industry in sales, that includes a number of things. It includes your marketing, it includes your prospecting, it includes understanding what's going on in your marketplace. Those things cannot stop. Arguably, if business is down, some of those things need to be ramped up, right? Like if we were any other business and business is down by 20%, well, we're probably going to have to look at some lead generating activities to make up for the 20%. If we were doing, X number of dollars or X number of hours into our lead generating activities and our business has dropped, well, that's going to likely have to go up. And for whatever reason, many agents, maybe that's an uncomfortable space for them, but they're slow to that. So I would get back into what we know works, getting in front of clients, looking for ways to perhaps spruce up your open house. I mean, I don't need to get into a coaching session with our audience, but there's multiple tried and true ways that we know can get you in front of a client this weekend. And I would go and do that. And if you're not doing enough of that, I would do more of it. And then hone my craft, get better at it so that my at-bats that I'm actually hitting the ball more often. And that gets into your scripts and dialogues and your mindset and all of that. So that's where I think a lot of agents right now that are struggling, they need to get back to those basics.
Oh, that's a good point, because I talk about that a lot, dollar productive activities, right? One thing I've talked about at other events and keynotes, I say going from employed to self-employed is a completely different world. And nobody actually cares if you run out of food.
Sure.
Right? Because if you have a job, you have KPIs to do.
Sure.
If you don't do them, you get fired.
Sure.
But once you become an agent, you don't have to do anything and nobody cares. Your broker doesn't care.
Right.
Right? So you are the only one that needs to care because you are the only one who can control your time.
Yeah. Ultimately, your clients will be who fires you, if you will. Right? And so many times, agents, I think, are slow to that reality. And that, coming back to working with a coach or a mentor or a group of individuals that could support you, you need to have an environment that people are going to be honest with you and help you make those corrections sooner. Not when I'm 2 months late on my car payment, right? When I first realized, hey, my quarter has gone down. I did less business this quarter than my previous quarter or the same quarter last year. That's looking at your business like a business. And we really need to be doing that. And as the tools get better and the agents get sharper with them, the disparity, perhaps, Leo, between the agents that are doing that effectively and those that don't might even get greater.
Well, I would completely agree with you and actually kind of emphasize it, right? Where I think all of the controversial conversations right now around the settlement is actually fear-based.
Sure.
Because I think you've heard me say this. I think everyone's a listing agent now, right? Because a buyer consultation is now
It's like a listing.
It's like a listing.
It's like a listing, right?
First, you assume it's competitive,
Right?
And assume they're interviewing several people,
Right.
just like sellers always interview a couple
Right.
of people to find the best services at price that you're willing to pay. Then also, you better come with a presentation, right? Like, this is what I'll
Right.
do, and this is what you'll charge. I'll charge you. And then, there's a beginning date, there's an end date, right? You wouldn't take a listing forever. No, it's like, hey, you have to be realistic on price, on fee, on everything else. What do you think about that subject? Do you think it's going to change dramatically, or do you think it's going to stay the same?
Well, I think some parts of it, the buyer's agents are going to have to get comfortable with the, for whatever reason, uncomfortable conversation of talking about their labor and their fee to their client. It reminds me of recently I had some work done on my house and I had a couple of different bids, and the contractor, each of them told me what their price was going to be. It included, right, what they were going to do, how long it was going to take, the quality of their work, the referrals of people that had used them before, and some of them had a strikingly different price estimate, and to do the same work that, quite honestly, between us, wasn't even that large of a job, like a two-day job, something that could be done in a weekend. If an individual doing construction work on my home is willing and knows that they're going to not only have to give me their estimate for their labor and be willing to compete for it, why not us? Why not us with a usually, or many times I should say, a much larger ticket item? And as we just said a minute ago, an item that has all these complexities to it that we're guiding them through, that they only do once every 9, 10, however many years it is. So our industry has been very comfortable all of this time at the buyer side, not having to have that conversation, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's going to change now.
Yeah, I heard an agent say this in a room the other day. Again, not speaking to what I feel about the case.
Right.
But an agent said, hey, now that we're here, it isn't fair that an agent who passed their test 2 weeks ago and someone who's 30 years of negotiating experience charge the same.
Sure.
And I said it's a good point
Not
of
a bad
conversation.
point.
Right?
Not a bad point.
Look, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, but like on the listing side, experience makes a difference. You get treated depending on how many homes you've sold, what your experience is like, and so on and so forth.
And that's kind of the case with any industry, right? I mean, you take
Paralegals,
a dentist,
doctors, dentists,
an engineer, an architect,
surgeons.
Absolutely. So why not with us? Again, conversations that you would think we would be having because of what we do, and for whatever reason we haven't, and yet here we are. So yeah, we're going to have to get good at that.
So parting thoughts for agents, and then also, what should, because again, one of the things that I actually am quite proud of is how flat our organization is, right? I think your agents are shocked when I call them out of the blue, or I return their messages on Workplace or text them back. And the same thing goes for you. What should agents reach out to you for? And how to connect with you, and then any parting thoughts you have.
Yeah, a couple of things in the state of California or the state of Illinois, and sometimes we're changing this, right, because the operation grows in that. I'm involved with items that have to do with the operations. So anything broker related, anything legal related, or things that come up that are unique. We're also helping a lot with the recruitment of the teams and offices, dare I say, that are looking to join us. Those are all of the things that I'm involved with in the state of California, or the Californias as we're calling them now, the state of Illinois, and sometimes states in between. Parting thoughts for our community. We're going to be okay. We're going to be all right. We get through it. We've gotten through it before. We will continue. Homes still need to be sold. And people, buyers and sellers, need help with that. Quite possibly more than ever before. Homes are more expensive than they've ever been. Loan programs are complex. So I would keep that at the forefront. Yes, we're going through some change, and that change may be uncomfortable, but on the other side of that, we're still selling homes. The marketplace in many instances has given us a boost. Prices are sometimes, in many cases, more expensive. And I would focus on the task at hand, helping more people get through that process more often and do a better job. You do that, I think everything's gonna be okay.
Thank you for everything you do for us, and thank you what you do for the agents.
Appreciate you, Leo. Thank you.
Thank you.